there were three artists, each one executing his work in different medium, like Andrzej Wróblewski paintings, Alina Szapocznikow sculpture, and Andrzej Wajda movies, who in a special way kept the remembrance of the Second World War and represented their war trauma in their art practically during the whole their lives. Andrzej Wróblewski died very early, so we couldn't see what could have been done later. But I figured that when I searched later, I figured that all three of them were adolescents during the wartime. They lost their fathers, and maybe they were oversensitive as teenagers, that they hold their memory for the whole life. And I decided to make the exhibition to see how this war memory is represented and what kind of links I could find between three of them. Because we knew that Wróblewski and Wajda were friends from the period of their studies at the Academy of Fine Arts in Kraków. But, and also Andrzej Wajda was a friend of Alina Szapocznikow, but they knew each other with Wróblewski, but that wasn't that strong link. But when I started to make the exhibition, I found that links in their pieces, in their art. So the title of the exhibition is taken from the title of this sculpture, which is called Difficult Age, by Alina Szapocznikow, executed in 1956, representing the, how to put it, welcoming life. This is exactly the moment of the age when Alina Szapocznikow ended up in ghettos and started her very tough war experiences. And Andrzej Wajda made, these are the pictures showing Andrzej Wajda turning the movie Pilatus und die andere. It was a German production made in Nuremberg, which is the city where the fascism and Nazism started. So that was a twofold story based on Bulhakov's Master and Margarita, but of course differently, absolutely differently done. And here we have the introduction to that movie, which is the dialogue between Wajda himself delivering the interview from the ship about responsibility to lead the people to death. We don't show here the full movies, but after having seen 12 of them, we excerpt some found footages according to some lines which repeated in his different movies, and put them together according to the subject. So this is the subject telling the stories about the greed which protects the people to rescue and find the freedom. The freedom is visible, but they cannot reach it in many movies, especially in the earlier period. And the main series which referred straightforward to the war, made by Wróblewski, was the series of executions that he started in January 1949, being 22 years of age. Altogether, he made 8 of them, plus some accompanied paintings that are not here. We have here only 5. We couldn't obtain more. And he represented the moment of execution in very different way. in each one is different. So here it's called execution, surrealistic execution, when you see the stages of being shot and dying. Like in the movie, that you start with a living person, then you are wounded and dying, and then finally you are something which is not a human being, in the color blue, because Wróblewski used blue as a symbol of death. So in different things, in different pictures, you see different representations of that subject. Like in this painting, which was later on flipped on another side. That means he originally painted that piece on the back side of the previous painting called Chauffeur. But his mother, after his death, flipped it again on the side of Chauffeur. So here is not really well visible painting called Ghetto. And it occurred, it was not the Warsaw Ghetto that everybody thought, but it was Vilnius Ghetto. Many factors of this painting give the evidence that he has in mind the ghetto in Vilnius. So this is one of the few recollections from his life here in Vilnius. So we have another recollection is this painting, which was this was the first that he did, and the only that you see the perpetrator. That means the officer that was considered for many years being the German officer, but after careful examination of the uniform, it occurred that this officer is representing the Russian troop Smersh, which penetrated Vilnius after the liberation. So this is another reference to Vilnius. And here is so-called execution with the boy. The symbol of the boy we don't still know, and I wouldn't dare to explain why the boy is repeating in many of his paintings. He is a symbolic figure, but also showing the bodies, which are in parts, might refer to the story that happened in Ponary in 1944, described very carefully by Józef Mackiewicz, already just after he had seen it. So I believe Andrzej Wróblewski knew that story, and that might be the reason why he showed these parted bodies, dead bodies. In this room, we also have a reference point of the sculpture by Alina Szapocznikow, which represents the dead body, wounded, called exhumated or exhumed, which, according to her declaration, refers to the history of Laszlo Reich, but many people rather connect this sculpture to her war experiences in the Buchenwald, where she met every day this type of, rotten bodies. So here you have two other executions. This is called from Bydgoszcz, but I think it doesn't refer Bydgoszcz. It refers some kind of a junction. Again, the boy who is a messenger of something that we don't know, standing over the figure of the Jewish boy. So it might also refer to the ghetto in Vilnius. And this execution, called With a Jew, the last one he ever did, and he tried to do it in a socialist realist style so that it's accepted. and the only that was shown during his lifetime at the exhibition in Poznań of the student of Academy of Fine Arts. And this painting has been destroyed at the very exhibition. That means the figure of the Jew has been cut with a knife, which is later on mended, and yeah. So probably that was the reason that he didn't show any other execution. He hid it in his studio, also because they were not socialist realistic in the style. But earlier, he made many sketches. So you could see here one sketch that was not executed. Later on, that was not converted in the big painting. But the other one here, which is obviously the sketch for the execution, for the surrealist execution, because it repeats everything that you have in the painting. And here is a sketch for another painting that is not present in this exhibition. There is another reference to the childhood in Vilnius here. This is that painting, again painted and flipped later on another side. And it's called Newly Bought Car. And it's a vision of the childhood, happy childhood in Vilnius, with his father standing next to the new car they bought. So it's colorful, and it is sort of a longing to the happy childhood before the war. And the chauffeur, which is called chauffeur, but nobody knows whether it's true, because it doesn't show the wheel, and it's secret why the chauffeur is sitting on the right. So now there's big discussion questioning the position of the blue, that means that driver, or the passenger standing back to the direction of the way, looking backward to the past, and that means driving to the future, which is unknown. But as the whole painting is in blue, we can presume that everything is already out from this world. And that references of Alina, Szapocznikow, who was considered very modern sculptor, but each of her of her sculptures were cracked. That means wounded. Like here you see, it's a body torn into pieces, and crippled. So it somehow refers to the executions, although it's a little bit later on, it's 60 or 61. And then the references between Szapocznikow and Wajda are very well visible here, not only in the movie Lotna, that there are many parallels between the movie and the gouaches or drawings made by Wróblewski. This is a series about, referring to the war. This is the series made 54. And the movie that Wajda executed in 59, the strongest reference that you can't see here is between the painting that Wróblewski made in 1948 called Fishes, or Atrocities of the War, representing green fishes cut heads, which served as an allegory of the soldiers sent to death. And then in Wajda movie and his storyboard to that movie, Wajda also referred to that fishes. You see here the frame with the fishes, and here you have this frame with the fishes, with this transformation, immediate transformation into the battle. So he introduced it into the movie, like, you know, first the fishes, like the providence, and then it's a reality, it's a slaughtery in the battlefield. So this existence of the fishes as an allegory might come from the series that he also made in '48, being 21 years of age, which was called Sunken Cities, or Sunken Cities, with fishes floating under the water. And this is referring to one of the 1001 Night story with a moral ending. The references between Szapocznikow and Wróblewski we can find in this example, that she executed this. This is a model for the monument, like, you know, the palm, dramatic palm. And much later, we found in his heritage, in Wróblewski's heritage, the same representation that was among you know, his drawings of washes somewhere in the pile. So this is incredible coincidence, but you can't just neglect it. And finally, the painting called Alarm, which refers to the possibility of the war already after the war. This is a, I should say, ideological painting about alarm that brings along the danger that the war will start again. By the way, here he represented his two children, the twins that were born, you know, a bit earlier. So this history that the artist was all the time afraid of death and the war is represented here, even when the painting is done in so-called almost socialist realist style, because that was the period when he was forced to do that. Another reference, which is not visible here in a straightforward situation, is by Wajda, who referred to another execution which we couldn't obtain, which is called execution on the wall, with one person standing and the other dying in a very strange position. And Wajda used that to show the death of the hero of his Ashes and Diamond movie, like almost one-to-one, of Zbigniew Cybulski. It takes a while to see it, but because this is a footage about the heroes who are killed by chance. You know, they were not supposed to die. You know, some of them, like the hero, this is from Katyn. Here you have this representation of the dying hero, which refers to the painting of Wróblewski. It's a pity we don't have it. So it's about the young heroes who could have been Wajda himself, and he pointed many of his characters in the movies who died prematurely, and each time it's a question, it could have been me. So this is that chapter. Alina Szapocznikow referred to the body as a vessel of life, and the fragility that you could destroy any moment. And as I mentioned before, she made many sculptures with a crippled body, like here you see, once, you know, unfinished. I mean, this body shouldn't stay alive. But at the same time, she was claiming the sexuality as something which keeps you alive. So if you look from some point of view, you see that this sculpture, which represents Maria Magdalena, has a phallic head, which is the symbol of life. And you can see it also, her body and biological subjects in her drawings, and another sculptures, like here, this is called Rose, but it's also a wounded, crippled body. And by chance, it occurred that Wróblewski also made a rose in this painting, in this monotype, in '56. So the parallels that I was looking for are so obvious that I couldn't resist myself between showing it. Like here, that Wróblewski also searched the inner parts of the body, like refer to the biology. And Szapocznikow did many organic paintings, drawings, abstract but very much organic. So you have here a few representations of her. And the movie by Wajda called the landscape after the battle, showing people kept in a concentration camp after being liberated from the German concentration camp. And festivities organized after after the victory over the Germans, and a very type of execution. And this position is taken from Wróblewski paintings and gouaches, like raising the hands and arms. And very powerful situation when they represented the prisoners are performing the Battle of Grunwald, very much referring to the movie made by the master of Wajda, Alexander Ford. So it's asynchronic, of course. And burning the puppy of the German soldier, like symbolical revenge. In 1956, Wróblewski took a trip to Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, and he, after having seen many different things, the only impression that he kept was the impression from the local cemeteries and the way they formed the tombs. And after coming back, he found another, and all these are the tombs. This is the tomb series in a different representation, different version, you know, like again referring to the biology, like the breasts, and the cross, which is telling about death. And all of a sudden, it occurred that Alina Szapocznikow, when she made portraits, she also put the sign of the cross on her faces. This is a very special period when she united the ready-made objects and the sculpture. Like here is the hat with the spoon. But also, she did it many times, but for example, she junked the soft body with the machine. We couldn't get many because first many of them were destroyed and one is impossible to travel, but this is the type of representation. Then she showed this biological body, some hold by machine, because she worked during the war in Buchenwald, lager in the weapon factory. So this was like this machine which is slavering the body. And here you have another line of Wajda movies that represent the merry-go-round in many movies, because merry-go-round, the symbolical merry-go-round, was put under the wall of Warsaw Ghetto when the uprising started. So some people, you see the wall and the merry-go-round in many movies. This was the reality, and Czesław Miłosz wrote a poem about it called Poor Poles Looking at the Ghetto, and that carousel became symbolic instrument, you know, to show the bystanders, to show the difference of the situation between the citizens of the same city during the war. And here you have the storyboard with carousel as well to one of the movies. Mainly here, you know, you have it, and you know, here is turning. So, yeah, so this is the bow that Wajda was paying to the suffering minority of Polish life, and to Alina, who was a Jew. And you know, in the further development, we discovered that the series of tombs in one painting, Wróblewski introduced two cut-off legs. It's the abstract. You can't. He never explain why these two cut-off legs are in that painting. But Alina Szapocznikow, when she was in Paris, she made a cast from his own leg, like also total abstract. So you see the similarities between these two artists that are unexpectedly to the point. And there was a long series that Wróblewski made. He started making skulls here in Vilnius when he was as an etching, and which is at the exhibition downstairs. This is his ex libris memento mori. But then after the whole life, which didn't last long, he came back to the subject and started, and here we see the development from the male portrait, which is more or less realistic, being transformed into different representations, finally showing the sort of a sketch that the person who is either he's dying or sleeping, that you never know. And Wróblewski referred to that situation many times. You don't know, sleep or die. And transform into the masks and ending with the skull. And when you look carefully to the sculptures made by Alina Szapocznikow, you see the same tendency, that it's a head already so deeply transformed that it's not a living person anymore. Here you have another example of this junction between machine, parts of the machine and the body. And see here, there's no head anymore, there is a machine, which is uniting head and sexual part. So it's also a strong, from the same period. And of course, again, coming back to the crippled body in the different versions, that refers to that sculpture which also shows the crippled body by Alina Szapocznikow. This is a very early example. And when Szapocznikow was already in Paris, she moved to Paris in 1963, and when she made a cast of her leg, then she started to make casts of her different part of her body, and distribute it, you know, like something which is the object of exchange with the society. So she did the cast of her breasts, lips, and made either the lamps or the fetishes, like with the empty tissue that still remembers the shape of the body. And Wróblewski did the same, the empty costumes that don't hold the body anymore. And she did many casts, like head, torso, belly. And when Wróblewski started to paint theoretically normal life, like situation here, he also somehow exposed the bellies. Like sitting woman who nobody knows whether she's still alive because she's partly blue, waiting for something. But Wróblewski called it chaired, as united with the chair. And you see, Alina multiplied her bellies into the pillows or cushions and so on. And Wróblewski multiplied bellies in his paintings. In every painting, which is each one is symbolical. This is the farewell painting, showing the person who is already waving farewell wave because she's partly dead. And here, when you have two figures, one is almost the same that we see in another picture, and we don't know whether it's a reality, the sitting figure, or only the phantom, which doesn't exist, and looking at, I mean, not really looking because sleeping, or, you know, this slight difference between sleeping and being dead is repetitive in Wróblewski's painting, but here you see the figure without head, which also happened very often in Wróblewski paintings. And chairing is something that Wróblewski, it came from the dream that Wróblewski had, but it couldn't stop. And he started to make mainly gouaches, but also paintings about this junction between the chair and the person. And this is a painting called A Line, a queue of the people waiting on the chairs. You don't know where to. There is an arrow showing something that they wait for, and you might easily guess they wait for the death. Also, some people, when he made it, interpreted it as a social problem. But I think he had in mind something more final. So here you have another study of cheering, and again the woman with the closed eyes. And finally, the last chapter showing the end of two of them, because Wajda survived them for 30 years or so. So Alina Szapocznikow found the cancer in her breast and started to make the series of tumors, like trying to make a portrait of the disease that she was suffering of. She made many of them. See in this picture that she made these tumors and take the picture holding them. So you see here one of them from polyester with a picture inside. And that picture is also represented in two other things. She made once in the whole life collage, putting together her photographs from before the war. Originally, she's sitting on the shoulder of her father as a girl, and she junked it with a dead body taken from one of the concentration or camp or Holocaust camps as her possible providence, because she knew she was condemned to death not because she was ill, but because she was a Jew, and she escaped from her fate by miracle. And being ill, she realized that she didn't escape for good. So she made that, and also repeated here, where you see her and this dead woman, and it's called memory. And at that period, she made a cast from the body of her son and make what she called a herbarium. That means cutted this cast into flat pieces, like the skin taken from the body, and put to dry. So the whole series is longer. We get here several objects, but very impressive. And also she did this kind of a figure, which is for Komarov, who died after his astronaut trip, which is in a way treated as like mummy, you know, like Egyptian pharaoh. And we junk it together with I wanted to show the letter that she sent to her friend and neighbor, Annette Messager, from hospital when she had mastectomy. So see, she's making a comic out of it, showing the stages of her situation after her breast being taken out, including this portrait with stitches. And the last painting by Wróblewski ever done, considered not finished, but I think it's finished, before he went for a walk to Tatra Mountains that he never came back from. And that movie by Wajda, which is called Everything for Sale, had a hidden story behind, because the turning was in the 68. 68, we had in Poland anti-Semitic campaign that Alina, that was the last trip Alina from Paris to Warsaw, that she showed that campaign, and she said, I would never come back. This is, the table is constructed in a way that you could hide someone inside. So like prepared to hide a Jew in case that all that story will come back. But at the same time, this is the movie when they talk together. Oh, this is one thing. It's again the figure, which is not dead, but it's this is, you know, the artificial body put by the police to show, I mean, to punish the so they did it purposely, the police, so that when you got over, you get the note. And this character is a representative of Wajda himself. He plays Wajda as filmmaker. So it's a filmmaker making the movie about filmmaker's story. And with his memories, war memories, and for that movie, Wajda did special exhibition by Wróblewski, so that his hero is walking. So now we have the recuperation of many paintings that are not in our show here, because we couldn't get them. And there is a dialogue about Wróblewski in that movie with the wife, that she said, you are always with your friends who died. And he said, yes, they were fantastic. So she's claiming that he doesn't stay alive with her, but is still having a head in the past of the war. So this is very strong sort of farewell to Wróblewski and to the war and to Alina. I mean, both to Alina. But then he came back many times again to the war subject after the death of those two other artists.